you.
Okay.
So my guest today is Bob Finlay of Finlay Counseling Services. He works out of Vancouver, BC. Bob is a registered family therapist working exclusively in the domain of family law. And Bob is a practitioner of reunification therapy. And I'm so interested to talk to you about this because reunification therapy is the thing. It's the thing that everybody wants to be able to engage in so that they can get back to having a good relationship with their kids when they've been alienated. And it's something that I think a lot of parents hold up as a kind of holy grail of therapy that's going to fix their problems. My personal interactions with clients who have engaged in reunification therapy have been mixed results. So I'm really, really interested to talk to you because you have such a long experience in this world. So thank you for being on the podcast. I appreciate you coming.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. And it's, as you say, it's a topic of great interest to many parents who are dealing with children who resist contact. Yeah, for sure.
So if, well, first of all, just tell me a little bit about like how long you've been doing this. How did you end up doing reunification?
Well, there's an interesting story behind that. This is probably 20 years ago. I was doing sort of normal, I'm putting quotation marks, normal types of counseling, family counseling, individual counseling, couples counseling, with people who are very motivated to learn from their counseling experience. And they would bring in sort of daily life problems. One day I started working with this man who came in and said, my daughter doesn't want to see me anymore. And my wife and I are going through a divorce. And as I talked to him, he was describing a number of behaviors on the part of his ex-wife that were concerning to him, and he thought she was contributing to the daughter not wanting to have any contact with him. And there are 3 children in this family. And so as I began to talk to him, I thought to myself, perhaps he might be interested in a team approach to dealing with this situation, right? And he was. And so that became my first team reunification process. And I recruited several therapists who I had a good collegial relationship with and who I knew were highly skilled. And we put together a team, and we worked with this family for about a year. And
Oh, wow.
We successfully worked with them. The daughter became much more open and willing to spend time with her father, and they repaired their relationship. And the other 2 children were prevented from also becoming alienated, which happens many times.
Oh, yeah, families. That's awesome.
If one child, particularly the older sibling, takes a negative approach towards one parent, the other children often follow suit.
Yeah.
So that was my first real experience, and because it was a successful experience, certainly motivated me to look into this whole area more, and to develop a program which we called Reconnect, which the main purpose is to reconnect kids with rejected parents. That program isn't operating in the same way anymore, but we still have teams of people that I associate with, that we work with on these cases.
Great. I'm curious to know what, maybe you can just dive in a little bit for me. What was it about this man's story or situation that made you have the idea of working in a team as opposed to working with him yourself, or working with the child, him and the child, or I don't know. Why did you go with a team?
Well, because first of all, I'm a family therapist, so I'm trained in family systems kinds of work. But it made sense to me, given that the mother was contributing to the rejection of the father by the child. It didn't make sense to me just to work with the child or just to work with the father.
That's so smart.
It made sense to me that you have to have both parents involved in the process.
Yes,
Now, that isn't always easy to accomplish, particularly in high conflict files. It's not always easy to accomplish to get the alienating parent to have to be involved in the therapy, but their involvement is really key to
absolutely. I
success.
agree with you.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
where I see it in my client population, where I see it not being effective is where the other parent won't participate.
mhm,
And it must be very hard. It was one of my questions was going to be how, maybe we'll get to that later, but
yeah.
how you might work to get around that. But um, I I wonder what does it take to be a reunification therapist? What if someone were out
Mhm,
there looking for one?
yeah,
You
yeah.
know, aside from somebody just saying that they do this kind of work, or, you know, maybe
Mhm.
they've been trained in it, how could a person, um, let's say, you know, approach an interview with a new practitioner to kind of suss out if they're the right one to work with your family?
That's a great question because, yes, there are many people out there who say, yes, I'm a reunification therapist. The real question is, can they do the job? Can they
Yeah,
be effective? So you want to look for someone who has the proper training and experience. Um, I get many parents who say, well, and I'm not being negative towards certain types of organizations, but they will go to organizations, let's say, that are low pay or are nonprofit, and they say, well, I can get free counseling there,
right.
right?
Oh my
And I will say
gosh.
to, yeah,
Oh, I've seen so many of that, like free
yeah,
counseling, bad advice.
yeah. So it's and some of these organizations, or most of these organizations, are, they're licensed. They provide quality counseling. The key question is, do they have experience in this particular area?
Right.
Because CRC cases, child resisting contact cases, are the most difficult in family law, the most difficult.
Yeah.
The courts often don't know what to do with these cases. Most therapists will throw up their hands when they start working with a family
Yeah.
like this and say, I'm overwhelmed. I don't know what to do with this family, right?
Yeah.
So you need people with training and experience. So yeah, I would definitely encourage people to go and interview who they're considering and say, tell me about your training. What kind of training do you have? Where did you get it? What did you learn? What are some of the lessons you've learned from the work you've done so far? How many cases have you dealt with? What were the outcomes of those cases? It's
Right.
it's like
I
it's
would
like a
think I was just sorry to interrupt you, but I was just
yeah,
going to
yeah.
say that, like, CRC, child resistant case, is that
Child
the
resistant
fine
contact. Yeah,
contact?
yeah,
Um, that's a really good uh phrase or acronym to know, I think,
yeah.
if you're looking for a reunification therapist, to present them with that,
Mhm.
you know, that specific, if it applies in your case, to
Yeah,
present them with that specific dynamic, and to say, how familiar are you with working with this? How many cases have you had?
right,
What's
right.
the percentage of positive outcome?
Yeah, yeah. And some of the other things you want to look for is you want therapists who are comfortable with court involved cases, because most of the time to get a court order for reunification therapy, or once you have a team in place, they need to provide reports to the court. Sometimes they're called to testify, so they need to be comfortable with all of that.
Right,
And many therapists are not. Many counselors are not. As soon as they hear the word court involved, they run the other way.
right.
So that person needs to be comfortable in that context.
Yeah,
As an individual, they also need to have a personality where they can tolerate dealing with conflict around them, and a lot of drama, and and high emotion. So they themselves need to be fairly strong and resilient, and be able to manage their own emotions
yeah,
in the light of what's going to be going on around them, and in dealing with this family. Because these families, once you enter into their family system, uh, they are highly emotional, highly dramatic, and highly dysfunctional. So therapists need to be well centered and well grounded within themselves.
yeah, that's great. What can you suggest to I'm going to say a dad, because we're talking now to dads. I understand. I
Yeah.
always need to preface this. I understand that this happens to moms. This is not a judgment call on my part that I work with
Right,
dads.
right.
It's where I feel comfortable. I feel
Mhm.
comfortable understanding the dynamic.
Yeah.
And I don't have any life experience regarding the dynamic of a father who is the alienator
Mhm.
in the family system. So that's why
Right.
I work with dads. But what can a dad do as a parent um, to prepare for unification therapy, or to, as the therapy goes on, to favor the successful outcome? What can the
Mhm.
parent contribute?
Okay. Well, it's very important to the success of reunification if the front end work is done properly.
Mm,
Most people think, oh, we'll just dive in. Okay, yeah, we'll get a team together, away we go. Um, but if the proper preparation is not done, and preparation includes, particularly with high conflict cases, although some cases go forward by a consent order, but a lot of the time, parents have to file an application to the court because one parent says, I'm not going to participate, or I don't want the children to participate. So they're a huge barrier to moving forward with reunification. So sometimes there has to be a lot of prep work, right? And that may include legal consultation. It might include retaining a lawyer in some cases, because you need to have it papered. You need to have it on paper that the parties have agreed or are ordered to participate in reunification therapy. The alienating parent has to be ordered to make sure the children attend counseling, and the parents have to be ordered to work together within the reunification process. The terms of payment, if you're hiring private people, needs to be papered and needs to have a clear agreement, because these types of families will find almost anything to fight about. So the
so this
more
is
that you can, yeah, more that you can paper it and detail it, then at least you have it an agreed upon plan for dealing with those details.
what you're describing to me just now.
Yeah.
I think some of our listeners would say that's already insurmountable, like that they
Mhm.
can't even imagine the teeth pulling, or whatever would have to happen, or the numerous court dates, or the cost involved in getting that far down the road with someone who is extremely oppositional. So
Mhm.
what can you offer to people who can't get this front end stuff in place? Like, does it just not happen? Like, reunification therapy is not going to be the right avenue for this family?
Yeah, well, I mean, in some cases, the answer is yes. The answer may be you're not going to be able to establish reunification therapy um, because you can't get the proper court orders, or it's too expensive. So there are some cases, unfortunately, that fall by the wayside, and the alienated parent, the rejected parent, has to resort to what is it that they can do or take control of. And I know
Exactly.
a lot of your programs are focused on that in trying to empower rejected parents to do whatever it is they can do on their own, right?
Exactly. And
Um,
there are many, many things that they can do on their own.
yeah,
So
yeah,
my goal having you here today is really to help to um, focus the dads uh, on the path that's going to be the one that's going to work for them, because
mhm,
there is a path that works. And for some
right,
of you, it will be reunification therapy. And I want it to be
mhm,
successful. And I want you to
mhm,
have your front end taken care of. And I want you to choose the right practitioner. And we're
right,
talking
right,
about all the things that you can do to make
right,
that work.
right,
And there is no feeling that if this is not the right path for you, it means that you're somehow shit out of luck or something.
mhm, mhm,
We take another path where we work with the dad on building his repertoire of all the things that he is going to do to reconnect with his children without the help of this reunification therapy. So it's a different path, but it's not it doesn't mean that it's a more impossible kind of an impossible dream, because it's not at all.
right,
um,
right,
do
yeah.
you work then with individual parents who are in this kind of situation and cannot, for the reasons you've already outlined, access the full sort of team approach to reunification that you offer?
Yeah, I do work actually with a lot of parents. That's a big part of my practice. So I do some reunification therapy on teams. There are some what I would call low grade types of cases where resistance is just starting by the children.
Right.
So sometimes I will even work with that family on my own if I think that that's the best way to go. But yeah, parents, rejected parents, there's a lot that they can do. They can consult with people like myself, and we will coach them in taking various steps to help them to deal with the situation. But yeah, they should never be giving up. There's a lot of different options. And if they are interested in reunification therapy, they can do a lot of research on that. They can look at what the courts are doing with respect to that. They can look at what therapists are in their community that are doing that kind of work and go and talk to them. Find out what the reality is of getting into reunification therapy so that they can make an informed decision about whether that's the right path. Even if they have the financial resources, even if there are people available to do the work, it may not be the best path for them, right? So do your research and do your prep. Right? Become really informed.
I love that. So I hope that we're going to have an opportunity to talk again and maybe dive into some specific topics related to this environment of child resistant contact, because that's what, so this is the essence of parental alienation. I've really only heard one case sort of come across my desk of a dad whose kids were saying, "Please, Dad, we want to live with you," and that the mom is withholding. Normally, the issue, it demonstrates itself, or the evidence of alienation is this child resistant contact. That's how you know that it's happening. And specifically, there's never a really good reason for it. There's never a good reason. There is a dynamic, obviously, where, you know, and that's what the courts are trying so hard to support, where the kids actually don't want to be in contact with a person who is not safe or healthy for them to be around. And kids are allowed to say, "My dad gives me the creeps. I don't feel safe with him. I don't like his friends. He's drunk all the time," whatever. That can be a real situation, and you want to protect the child from that. But what you're talking about and what you deal with is the kids who just say, "I don't need to have a reason. I just don't like my dad. I just don't want to go there. I can't really tell you why." And that is the evidence that something is not right in this situation, because the child has to be able to express, at least to a trusted therapist, what it is about their parent. And we often hear things like, you know, he doesn't love me because he didn't make my bed, or he doesn't love me because he didn't pack my lunch the way I like it to be, or something. So we're gonna meet again and do another session where we can dive more deeply into specific topics related to the process of reunification as a therapist, and how we can better understand the inner workings of that, so that parents can prepare better, get a better result from the reunification therapy, make the process maybe happen more expeditiously, let's say, because I know that it can often take a very long time to get results. So thank you for being here today. I look forward to meeting with you again. And before we leave, please tell people how they can find you.
Oh, okay. Well, I am located in Vancouver. However, I do a lot of work virtually by Zoom. So I meet with parents across the country, sometimes internationally, who are looking for advice and guidance as to how to proceed in these types of cases.
That's good to know. So someone, you know, from the US or Europe could potentially contact you. That's great. So where will they find you?
Okay, so my email is bob@finlaycounseling.ca. So Finlay Counseling is all one word. Finlay's Finlay, COUNSELLLING.ca. And if they want to reach me up by phone, it's 604-780-7945. And I also have my website, finlaycounseling.ca.
Awesome. I'm going to put all that information in the show notes as well.
Okay.
Thanks very much for being here, and thanks for listening.
Yeah, thanks for your interest. Take care. Bye-bye.